Hi, I'm Mike McLean. Welcome to the Short Circuit podcast brought to you by Swift Aircraft. In this series, we'll be chatting with a variety of people from all walks of life, but who all have one thing in common: aviation. We'll discuss how and why they got into aviation, what or who inspired them, and what they would say to encourage young people to get involved. Flight fascinates many of us, and our guests will explain why they are compelled to look to the sky. Today's chat is with Alex Durand. As CEO of Klein Aviation and an ambassador for the latest Department for Transport initiative, the Generation Aviation, Alex is ideally placed to talk about the business side of the industry and how that translates to preparing for the future, including how STEM is an effective way to engage with young people. His personal experiences and opinions from a business perspective have value. So, let's listen into the chat. Okay, good afternoon. And Alex, welcome to the Short Circuit. Thanks for joining me late on a Friday afternoon. And we're going to kick off the age-old manner of question one, and that is, who are you and what's your role in aviation?
Hi, Mike. Thanks for the invite. So I'm Alex Durand. The current role, I'm the CEO of Klein Aviation Group, which is a Norwich-based aviation company, which includes Saxon Air companies, which operate a range of aviation activities in business general aviation. I'm also vice chair of our trade body, the British Business General Aviation Association, and I've recently been appointed an aviation ambassador for the Department for Transport.
Wow. So you're spreading wings, no pun intended. That's I didn't know about this ambassador role. So when did this ambassador role happen? That's
It's
new to me.
literally a week ago. It's a 2-year appointment. There's 10. It's voluntary. There's 10 appointed by the Department for Transport, and it's to really try and spread the word about. They have the Generation Aviation program, which is really about promoting the industry, particularly among to everyone, particularly young people who haven't considered it, and to demographics that aren't represented as they should be.
This is exactly why we should be talking to you. So no, that's perfect. I'm very pleased. I'll need to do a bit more homework about that. That's wonderful. So I'm sure we'll come back and touch on some of these subjects. But question number 2 is just to find out a little bit more about the man. What was the incident or the person that first inspired you to get involved in aviation when you were, I'm assuming, in your youth?
It's a really interesting question because I thought I knew, and so what I've taught myself is I put off work as long as possible. Did an English degree because I like reading, with American studies, so I could watch cowboy films and just have fun. And at the end of it, I realized I had to get a job. And near the end of it, a friend of mine ran waving this book called Chicken Hawk, which was about a helicopter pilot in Vietnam. Which for some reason I just love. I'll reread it, and I don't know what it is about it. Obviously, there's not that many opportunities to be a combat pilot in Vietnam, and not that I'd really want to, but I think it was just expressed what being a helicopter pilot, just the sort of the freedom of just really sort of triggered something in me. So that's what inspired me to get into aviation. Although I was talking to a relative who remembered I talked about wanting to be a pilot when I was 5. So it's been lurking in there somewhere. So yeah, that was the start.
Okay. Well, so for those of us who are old enough to remember some or all of the Vietnam War, yeah, that's, if you heard helicopter, that's all you ever thought about at that during that period. It was just the sound of choppers whizzing around the place. It was.
I think I just know it from films, but
Yeah.
it's a definitive, and the Apocalypse Now sequence, and just something about. I think it was obviously full mobilization of helicopters in as units.
Yeah. Hueys were the big thing, and of course the other thing was the TV show MASH with
Yeah.
which was the Korean War as well. Crikey, I'm old. this is terrible. So it was there, but it was maybe even deeper. But so we need to do some regression therapy to find out the
Exactly.
the
So,
exact.
but I think so. What was interesting, and I think this touches on, probably what we'll come to in terms of careers and how they come about is I was going to get to publishing. But I thought actually it's piqued an interest, so I applied to British Airways because I realised I couldn't become a helicopter pilot that easily. They told me I'd done absolutely nothing to justify a place on their program academically. So I got a job at the local airport. I was living in Oxford, the Kidlington Airport, and which is one of the great place to have started because they teach commercial pilots ab initio flight training. So I got to see the privileged, those that had been selected, those that had chosen to do it as a second career, and I learned to fly and earned enough to do a flying lesson once a month, and so really got to experience a lot of different aspects of aviation in one place, and never really went back from there, or never really went forward from there.
Well, so I mean that leads perfectly into the next question, which was, you're just getting into that role and so on, because from that beginning there, you've literally sort of started to cover an awful lot of ground. And having been to your facility at Norwich Airport, Saxon Air, which is a very nice facility, by the way, there's a few steps you must have gone through, a few hoops you must have jumped through to get to this point now, where you are. Uh, you've been tapped on the shoulder and said, "Can you be an ambassador for British Aviation?" I mean, that's a nice thing to happen, and there's no point in being modest about it. It's interesting to the rest of us to find out how you got there and what you did.
Well, I think so. I did have to apply, but there's not many made it through. And what I really like about it is the other nine are really impressive, all very different. So it just showcases how much talent and energy and ability is out there. But from my point of view, I think it's kind of rites of passage. I've as they flatteringly put in my bio, I've got decades of experience, which kind of you feel your age a bit when you see that. But I have, it's all I've ever done is work in this sector,
Yeah.
and none of it was planned. So it's very much following opportunities or things you had to do. So one of the things involved, I got my PPL. I did about another 40 hours in a slightly more complex single, which was interesting. I thought I was going to go up the career ladder that way, but I was working for a very small air taxi company and got more interested in running the business side of it and the opportunities from that, and gradually drifted away from wanting to fly to just being fascinated by how you could generate demand for an industry that isn't seen as in demand. And then you're running small businesses, and then aviation is an offshoot of a business. So it's really you've got many things going on. And so from a careers pathway, and we probably it jumps in and out of that, is you're around aviation, but actually your day to day is making sure that business works. You've got customers coming in the door, you're doing a good job. The aviation is the service or the product, but there's different disciplines going on. So I set myself on a management course at some point to understand how that would work. I set myself on an accounting course so I could understand the numbers more. Worked for myself for about 7 years as a consultant, setting up other people's businesses and doing a bit of charter broking, a bit of aircraft sales. And then the opportunity came up at Norwich about 11 years ago to come and they put a CEO role. And the opportunity to come in and run a number of different businesses, one common ownership, but we've got passenger handling, we do helicopter charter, we do jet charter, is really interesting to then try and integrate them. So many things going on.
It's interesting. I was listening back to a few of the previous episodes earlier today, and what's become clear to me is that there seems to be an opinion that aviation is very niche, it's invisible, most people aren't interested, it's disconnected from just about everything else. But what's coming through to me and what you've just said is that there is a whole network out there that is active, vibrant, forward thinking. We're just not very good at hooking it all together and seeing the bigger picture. I think there's a mindset that everybody's looking after their little patch, and missing opportunities to work with and alongside other people. And I think from what you're saying now with this ambassador role and the things that are going on in Norfolk and around the likes of Saxon and Swift and the other people involved in that area, to me, there's a huge opportunity to get the UK buzzing again when it comes to aviation. It just seems to me that it's ripe for it. All we need to do is to start talking to each other and promote it a little bit more, and not be seen as so niche and so exclusive. I think elitist is maybe a bit too harsh a word, but I think there's a lot of people would love to get involved, but they feel excluded.
Niche becomes exclusive, doesn't it, if you're not
Yeah.
careful? And I think that's what we've done. We've and I think there's a general realization. There's a lot of just the last couple of years. I think there's a lot of change. I think we've realized that almost in unison, and we realize we're not exclusive. We're not those sorts of people. We want to share it, and we've just sort of assumed people will find it because that's how we did it.
Mhm.
And of course, they haven't. Sort of most people, even people with a reasonable amount of knowledge, they have no real clue. We've made a real effort to try and open our doors and showcase what we do. So we think we've explained it. We haven't even begun to. It's niche, which makes it interesting. There's a lot of individually interesting things going on, and in combination, that's what's so interesting. There's always movement. There's always activity. No day is ever the same.
Mhm.
Yeah, we've. That doesn't mean it's cool to be incoherent. So, and I was really struck a few years ago. Somebody, we were complaining on our BBJ board meeting about the upcoming shortage of skills and why do people not find their way to industry. And this person just said, "So I go to the careers fairs and I see the airlines, I see the major airports. Have you ever been?" And we were, "No, we haven't even got a banner to put up."
Yeah.
And I've really, and that's really a lot of the work we're trying to do now. It's not just us; it's credit to the DFT for this initiative, and it's wider than that. It's across. I think internationally, the industry realizes that collectively, it's actually quite big.
Mhm.
It's really important, and I think some of the challenges coming to aviation for its environmental footprint are making us realize that we could inadvertently disappear and people won't know what they've lost till it's too late, and that we will have lost something significant. So there's a real responsibility to explain it properly.
Yeah, well, that's a very key point, which again steps straight into what do you see as the major developments that are coming imminently over the horizon and within our lifetimes? What do you reckon are the top two things that are going to change aviation or reinvigorate aviation?
I mean, if technology can count as one, it's massive. We are on genuinely once in a lifetime transformational change. There's extraordinary things in development. Even just seeing some of the stuff Swift work on, it's all over the place. Lots of innovation, lots of individual ways. We're moving from a very sort of two-dimensional world where we can see turboprops and jets and to changes in propulsion, changes in the way they do it. You're talking about UAV. You're talking about whether they're crewed or they're uncrewed. You're talking about they're going to a zero emissions footprint or just a capability we haven't got. You talk about quadcopters. You talk about eVTOLs with there's something there's different numbers all the time, but I've heard between 250 and 650 new types of aircraft in development. That's
Wow,
astonishing.
that is
Then
astonishing.
all of those, most of those will change the infrastructure we need. The concept of vertiports, which I think is slightly overblown, but there's a concept. It's to show this much greater connectivity. Bring your airport to where you need to be, rather than these fixed infrastructures. But there's a place for everything. So I think it feels like there's a real buzz at the moment. Things are changing, but I don't think enough of it's changed for most people to realise that.
And would you say, but being a bit parochial, is the UK at the forefront of this? Are we involved? Are we close enough to get involved?
Yeah, I think we are. That's it's a really it's quite interesting when you look at your own challenges and then they're not your own. So we as a company are probably not vocal enough about what we do. We get our head down, we do the best we can. Actually, we should explain it. And I think that's almost sums up the UK aviation industry. It has been a leader. It's a couple of things. I was at a meeting yesterday, which we had European and US aviation led, really. Looking at some charts, the UK is, I think, statistically, is the most significant business aviation, business general aviation country in Europe, if we, in the broad sense of continental Europe. So yes, we are statistically. And if you look at the evolution of these new technologies, an awful lot, a disproportionate amount are going on in the UK. So there's still a deep spirit of innovation and enterprise here. So yeah, it's important. But I think you could go back to, there have been key technology changes recently we've missed out on, or we sell it on to someone else. It needs a drive and a focus. And if we're not careful, this is, there's no barriers to entry. People will copy and catch up.
Yeah.
But there's a community, or there's complementary activity here that one thing helps the next one develop, and we've got that right now.
Is there anything that immediately springs to mind that the UK lacks in pulling these things together and giving them the kickstart that they need? Because from my personal experience is that it just seems incredibly difficult to do anything. If you have a good idea, then getting that idea off the ground, no pun intended, see that there's just so many barriers in the way. And a lot of the time I don't understand why. I mean, there's always money, so money is always there in the background, but it seems to be made so difficult, and I don't understand why it needs to be so
I think
difficult.
it seems like it's made to be difficult. I think it's, if you don't lead, if you leave empty ground, it'll get filled by something. So if you don't show, I think what's lacking is a clear, committed vision, a funded vision, a determination. If you look at the US's Inflation Reduction Act, that is a massive total commitment to driving and supporting new technology change. I think because we've had a really difficult time as a country with Brexit and COVID, and there seems to be just a lack of belief that we can go big picture on things. And I think that's just crying out for it. It's something we can't do it and join it up. And there are, you'll be familiar. I know projects that are, everything is fundamentally financially limited. There's only so much you can do with your own funding. It's very hard to get funding. Aviation is a particularly difficult sector. It's excluded. It's just not. We've almost pretty much given up getting external funding. Aviation is an exclusion. We find you can't even get a credit card payment machine because aviation's an excluded sector. That doesn't help when you're trying to do transformational change.
Yeah.
When you can't take the money. It's really small stuff, but if then you're looking to get significant capital finance, you just run out of momentum.
Yep. We need to do something about that. Well, thanks for that. Looking towards the future a little bit. So they say the young people are our future. So STEM activities, STEAM, what do you think is relevant in STEM and aviation? Do you think there's enough going on? Because a lot of people, when they talk about STEM, the automotive industry gets an awful lot of support, sort of computer technology, electronics and that sort of thing, cyber gets lots and lots of support. Aviation always seems to be lagging behind a little bit. And I'm just wondering, what's your thoughts? What can we do to improve engagement, outreach, that sort of thing?
I think it is because it's niche. You can't do it at scale, and therefore it's very hard to have a comprehensive national network of aviation supported STEM stuff training. I think there are good initiatives. There are some colleges which are doing some good work on it, but I think it's really hard to actually go and do it. If you want to go and I'm not an engineer, but the opportunity to go and make something, get your hands on it, learn together. We've done a couple of a piece of work with a scout group, and basically around electric propulsion. But then at the same time, we but there was a traditional engine which was sort of just not quite there, but it wasn't part of it. And in the end, the ability to take it apart and put it back together, you realise just doesn't happen. You just don't really find that. There's probably a lack of resources or a lack of so it's very fringe. So what we can do is, I think that's where we do collaborate more, and we talk about it. We work together, and I think to if we're doing something, make sure we open it up while we're doing it. We're making this, come and have a go at making it yourself, and trying to engage some of the local authorities and perhaps some of the larger organisations that can support. But it is, once again, you've got to do it yourself, and that's hard when you're trying to run a business.
Yeah, yeah. It's time consuming. It's not cheap, even just in staff time and organisation, let alone actually investing any cash into doing STEM. And it's not easy because if you're dealing with certified stuff, then only certain people can do certain activities. So you can have can have young people shadow you, but they can't actually get their hands on a spanner. So you then have to look at different areas of activity that they can actually get involved in, because for young people, just following around somebody around and watching them is not going to be
No, they've got to be
stimulating.
doing it, haven't they?
They've got to build something or make something or connect something or hit something or whatever. I mean, there are lots of opportunities that we've come across in the past, and the cadets, or RAFAC as they're now called. I mean, they're doing their best to get out there and involved, and there have been other projects and builder plane projects and so on, which we've talked about on the short circuit previously. Yeah, it is a challenge, but I think for ourselves, our own organisations, that we have to do a bit more thinking and do a bit more activity, because
I think
the last thing we did was I thoroughly enjoyed, so that was good.
Yeah, and I think the electrification of aviation is really interesting. So I think people get a lot of discussion about what will be the successful future zero emissions propulsion. Actually, electric propulsion is here now, and it's different in that it's more easily applied to across all transport sectors. So then you're in cartoon terms, aviation can attract the interest because it seems to have a natural engagement. But essentially, when it comes to making stuff for an aircraft, you realize it's the process of construction or engineering. And it might be that you just happen to enjoy that. And that doesn't have to be aviation, which, then you've got the automotive sector. So I think if you start from approach it more as a commonality, rather than what are the differences, what's the same, riveting, all the basic engineering skills, start with those and then start to differentiate. If people want to get into uh, cars or aircraft or buses or other forms of engineering,
I
I
agree
think that helps
wholeheartedly.
to unlock it.
So I see that we're pushing on a little bit in time, so I don't want to rush you at the end. We can always come back to some things, but before we disappear, we come to the big question of the day, and that is, what is your favorite aeroplane and why?
That's a tough one. I was
Like,
thinking about.
you can give me a few. Show you can
I,
show you're
well,
working.
my immediate answer, which kind of has no real logic. I just, for some reason, I just love the Apache helicopter. I don't know what
Ah,
it is. When I'm old enough to know when that came out, and again, maybe this is when I had this slightly bizarre fixation with the combat helicopters, but it, it just looked like something so cool. I don't know what it is. I think it really has something about it. I don't know, maybe it's almost insect-like qualities. It looks. I'm no engineer, but I've always found it interesting that so much the issues we have with with sustainability in aviation is the sheer effort to part company with the ground.
yep.
And then if you look at a bird, you look at an insect, and we don't seem to have gone that way. And so maybe things that sort of look a bit more like they're part of the natural approach. I mean, they're highly unnatural machines. But yeah, so I've always that's the sort of thing I will stop and look at, or the great technology, something like the Osprey. It's always military because I think they can push the envelope.
Mhm. All right. Yeah, biomimicry is
That's the one.
it's a word that's been popping up more and more in some presentations that I've been doing, and back and forth with the youngsters. So yes, I agree. The Apache, very insect-like. The Osprey, I don't think there's anything in nature that looks anything like that one.
Well, I think that's arresting for different reasons. It's just so unnatural. It's like, how is that doing what it's doing?
Yeah, yeah. It's that's a complicated thing. Although they're not doing anything I don't think at the moment. I think they've all been grounded again. It's not great, but that's
Slightly
engineering. That's an engineering thing.
exactly, yeah, yeah, complex engineering. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think anything that you're just in awe at how. I mean, you could argue huge aircraft. I was at the facility a couple of weeks ago underneath an A340. It's not the biggest aircraft in the world, but I was just when you stood underneath it, thinking,
Yeah.
how?
Yes. It's a big lump. It is a big lump
It's
of thing.
enormous. I mean, the engine's just the size of a house. It's like it's extraordinary.
Yeah.
But maybe if I'd done engineering and I'd understand it, it'd be completely normal, and I wouldn't be baffled by it.
It's perfectly fine to consider it witchcraft. It's just
Good,
it's not a
good.
problem.
It
It's
is.
not a problem at all. So so which one are you going to choose? Are you going to stick with the Apache, or you
Most
got
of the
anything?
Apache, yeah. I
Any
yeah.
particular one? Is it is it the longbow, the one with the radar thing on the top, or
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it's just it almost seems that it looks like it's got a life of its own. And this is pre-AI and all this sort of. This is a long. It's actually quite old now, but at the
yeah,
time it was like something out of sci-fi.
yeah. Last time I was in London, no, second last time I was in London, there was it always freaks me out. You see them Apaches going down through the countryside, it's fine. When you see them in an urban environment, they're terrifying.
Yeah,
You're just going,
yeah.
what is he doing? Why is he here? Is this the end of the world?
Yeah,
It is a bit scary. So all right,
it is.
so that's I can say that to date nobody else has chosen the Apache, so that's another first for our cork board. I don't know if you've had a look yet, but if you go to our website, there's the virtual picture board in our virtual control tower of all the favorite aircraft of all our previous guests. So the Apache's up there, and that'll
I'll
do very nicely.
probably regret my choice when I look at those, but yeah.
No, no, no. I tell you, you'll be surprised. You'll be surprised. So, Alex, it's been absolute delight having you on the short circuit. Thank you for coming along. I know you've been extremely busy. It's been a long, long week. Um, I think it's time for us to sort of sign off and finish off for the week. Get our feet up, and hopefully my nose will be a bit clearer next week, and I won't sound so muffled.
No
And
problem at all. No, thanks so much for the opportunity. It's really kind of you.
no problem, Alex. It's been great talking to you.
Thanks, Mike.
So that was Alex Durand, an ambassador for Generation Aviation, helicopter enthusiast, but primarily a businessman. Starting at grassroots level and working his way up through the sector, taking opportunities as they appeared, Alex's point of view is an interesting one. He sees the aviation industry through a pragmatic lens rather than a nostalgic and romantic rose-tinted pair of spectacles. I think that it's important that we have a wide range of opinion available when looking at the UK industry. The decision makers need input from across the board, but it's also important that the hard-nosed business decisions are influenced by direct experience and understanding, not just the numbers. It looks to me like Generation Aviation has recruited wisely in this instance and will help #inspiring aviation. And on that note, I'll end by saying, fly safe. You have been listening to The Short Circuit, presented by Mike McLean and sponsored by Swift Aircraft with the #InspiringAviation. This has been a Zoom Spike production.